Mexico's president was very firm. She called out President-elect Donald Trump, saying that both Mexico and the United States collaborate on a lot of different levels, including economically. And in other words, she said that she's ready to respond in kind. Let me read to you a portion of that letter that she sent to President-elect Donald Trump. She said, quote, President Trump.
After one tariff will come another and another until we put our common businesses at risk. For example, Mexico's main exporters to the United States are General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford Motor Company, which came to Mexico 80 years ago. Why put a tax on them that puts them at risk?
Las cuales llegaron a México hace 80 años.
It's not acceptable and would cause inflation and job losses in both the US and Mexico.
Imagine a marketplace where your most loyal customer suddenly demands that you comply with their every wish or face a doubling of your costs. This is precisely the situation Mexico finds itself in, as Trump's reckless tariff proposals threaten to derail years of economic collaboration and mutual progress. These tariffs are far from a minor dispute. They strike at the heart of a vital partnership and risk severe economic consequences for both nations. Mexico, the United States' main ally and a critical trading partner, now faces the prospect of being unfairly targeted and economically exploited. Trump's tariffs, supposedly designed to curb illegal immigration, are not only ineffective, but also impose a crushing financial burden on both sides of the border. These proposals fail to grasp the complexities of migration and trade, conflating unrelated issues with disastrous consequences. Consider the numbers. The US and Mexico share a bilateral trade relationship worth over $725 billion annually, making Mexico America's largest trading partner. This partnership sustains industries and livelihoods across both nations, from avocados to car parts. Yet, Trump's proposed tariffs, ranging from 5% to 25%, threaten to cripple this relationship, jeopardizing countless jobs and businesses. These tariffs are based on a flawed premise that trade and migration are directly connected. In reality, migration stems from deeper issues like poverty and violence in Central America, not Mexico's role as a manufacturing hub. Forcing Mexico to shoulder the blame for a humanitarian crisis it did not create is not just misguided, it's economic extortion. This exploitative approach disregards years of cooperation between the two nations on border security and immigration. It undermines the very essence of the USMCA, a trade agreement designed to strengthen economic ties, not weaken them. By prioritizing short-sighted political tactics over meaningful collaboration, Trump risks dismantling a partnership that has brought prosperity to millions, replacing progress with unnecessary conflict.
Tariffs would hurt both countries and especially US companies based in Mexico.
After one tariff will come another and another until we put our common businesses at risk.
Despite Trump's misleading rhetoric, tariffs are not paid by foreign governments, but by American importers and, ultimately, by American consumers. Imposing tariffs on Mexican goods would act as a hidden tax on American households, significantly increasing the cost of everyday items. Mexico supplies nearly 45% of the fresh fruits and vegetables imported into the US. Tariffs on these goods would lead to sharp price hikes, making staples like avocados, tomatoes, and peppers unaffordable for many. Families already struggling to make ends meet would bear the heaviest burden, facing even greater challenges in putting food on the table. The damage wouldn't stop at the grocery store. Industries such as electronics and automotive manufacturing would also suffer deeply. American automobile production relies heavily on components assembled in Mexican factories, which help keep costs manageable. A 25% tariff on these goods would drive up the price of a new car by over $1,300, an unnecessary financial blow to American consumers. The supposed victory for American workers is an illusion, as the real winners are the profiteers who benefit at their expense. Trump's tariffs threaten to unravel the intricate and interconnected US-Mexico supply chain that has fueled economic growth for both nations. Many American manufacturers depend on Mexican components to produce finished goods, particularly in industries with razor-thin profit margins like automotive and electronics. For these companies, increased costs could mean bankruptcy or the relocation of production to countries outside North America, undermining American jobs and economic stability. Rather than boosting the economy, these tariffs jeopardize it, eroding the foundation of US-Mexico economic relations and creating hardships for American families and industries. This policy is not just short-sighted, it's economically reckless. With an annual import of nearly $100 billion, Mexico is a major contributor to the US car parts demand in the country. If a 25% tariff is levied on these imports, the entire industry would suffer from production delays, job losses, and reduced competitiveness in international markets. This could cause severe consequences for small businesses that depend on cheaper components from Mexico, potentially forcing them to shut down entirely. This would have a ripple effect on the corporate world and millions of workers nationwide. The loss of jobs in Mexico would exacerbate economic instability and the migration challenges that Trump intends to address.
For example, Mexico's main exporters to the United States are General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford Motor Company, which came to Mexico 80 years ago. Why put a tax on them that puts them at risk?
las cuales llegaron a México hace 80 años.
It's not acceptable and would cause inflation and job losses in both the US and Mexico.
Y pérdidas de empleo.
Trump has tried to pitch these tariffs as a solution to illegal immigration, but it reflects a larger hyperbole of the actual issues. People migrate because of poverty, violence, and lack of opportunity. Tariffs will only exacerbate this. In an attempt to curb immigration controls, Mexico has deployed thousands of troops to its southern border and increased the deportation of Central American migrants. However, even as these measures have stretched the country's resources, Trump demands more and penalizes the country economically. Why? The irony here, however, is that slapping tariffs on Mexico's economy would, in effect, swell the ranks of economic migrants. Poor families hit by rising unemployment and inflation in Mexico will be compelled to seek out their fortunes elsewhere, including across the border in the United States. And even while attempting to stop migration, his proposed policy will probably do more to exacerbate the crisis. It won't do anything to help Trump's tariffs at the US border. The impact will be much worse, particularly on small-scale farmers and manufacturers in Mexico. Why? Because US markets are a major source of livelihood for many, slapping tariffs on them might lead to the total annihilation of entire industries. For example, the US receives billions of dollars from Mexico annually in agricultural production. Tariffs will force the Mexican farmers to cut prices to compete with the American farmers, reducing their already very low incomes. Why is this necessary? Small producers who cannot afford these losses may face catastrophic consequences. This economic deprivation may spiral completely out of control. Social stability will be threatened as businesses fold and unemployment rises. It might have lasting effects on the Mexican economy and its ability to function as a partner to the United States. By itself, Trump's announcement of the tariff is a violation of the trust that has always been between the US and Mexico. For decades, the two countries have solved common problems like drug trafficking and economic development. Agreements like NAFTA and the USMCA were created to increase these connections and put a framework of mutual benefit into place. Trump undermines the hard-won gains by weaponizing tariffs. Why? His statement makes the American administration view its immediate neighbors not as partners but as agents of political power. That method could alienate Mexico from America and push the neighbor towards other global powers merely looking to replace the American hegemony. The implications are that this move will dent America's legitimacy on global platforms. For instance, why should other countries trust the US if it cannot keep its promises to a country like Mexico? While such a policy might have immediate gains, it may prove disastrous for America as a reliable partner in the longer term. While huge, these tariffs' economic and social impact certainly has greater ripples outward. However, setting aside the economic ruin of Trump's tariffs on Mexico, the loss is much greater than anything measured by dollars and cents. What this policy accomplishes, beyond the trading of goods, is destroying the bedrock on which international diplomacy functions as a result of undermining those fundamental principles upon which it works. All the trust, all the partnership over generations between America and our strategic partner Mexico have just been wrecked by a reckless decision on tariffs of Trump's doing. Now, we'll address the greater diplomatic ramifications of these tariffs, how they affect global trade, and what options are left to Mexico and the world at large to offset this negative precedent. A partnership currently threatened by the United States and Mexico threatens bilateral relations. The United States has relied on Mexico as a valuable partner for decades. The two countries have built a relationship of mutual benefit through security cooperation and economic integration, among other ways. Trump tariffs may break the partnership. The tariff threats were the subject of demonstrations by Mexican officials expressing disappointment. These tariffs signify that the US regards Mexico as an inferior entity that should be made to yield rather than as an equal partner. This change is risky because it can foster resentment and damage trust building. Mexico has consistently been a supporter of the US in addressing issues of immigration, drug trafficking, and border security concerns within its borders. It has deployed thousands of troops to the southern border and ramped up the deportation of Central American asylum seekers to control the flow of migrants. Trump's tariffs undermine such efforts, suggesting that the US will not support such initiatives without cooperation. Treated this way, Mexico risks alienating itself and may be forced to seek out allies elsewhere. In tying trade to immigration, Trump sets a perilous precedent that may have far-reaching consequences beyond North America. Traditionally, trade agreements are forged based on economic considerations, with mutual benefit as the goal. Trump's tariffs are used as a political bludgeon, further muddling the line between economic policy and trade agreements. This approach elicits several chilling responses. If the US can impose tariffs on Mexico to address immigration issues, why hasn't it tried using this to tax Canada, Europe, or other countries? Today, it's immigration. It could be any matter of defense spending, climate policies, or anything that Trump wishes to say. Such behavior undermines the world trading system based on trust, predictability, and rules-based agreements. America's reputation as a reliable partner is tarnished, thereby making other nations apprehensive about trading with countries invaded by terrorism. Mexico is at a juncture. Its response or reaction to Trump's tariffs should not be at the cost of its sovereignty or economic stability. Trump's demands mean Mexico can't back down. To give in to him is to invite further economic exploitation from the US and other countries that may follow similar tactics. Mexico won't be bullied into defeat.
Now, the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has suggested that her country could retaliate against tariffs proposed by the US President-elect Donald Trump with its own import taxes. Sheinbaum also warned of dire economic consequences for both sides.
Mexico could use international bodies like the WTO as a countermeasure against the tariffs imposed by Trump. According to WTO rules, raising tariffs on a whim and against all trade deals is considered illegal. A formal complaint allows Mexico to voice its grievances, but would also help it gain international support. Mexico must urgently diversify its economic ties to reduce its heavy reliance on the United States, forging stronger partnerships with nations like the European Union and China. This strategy has become increasingly critical in the face of President Donald Trump's reckless tariff policies, which go far beyond trade disputes and wreak havoc on the lives of countless individuals on both sides of the border. Trump's tariffs are a blunt instrument that punishes struggling workers and families, many of whom view the US market as their only escape from poverty. These ill-conceived policies are forcing small-scale farmers, factory workers, and business owners into a spiral of layoffs, wage cuts, and even devastating business closures. Instead of addressing real economic challenges, these tariffs amplify suffering, leaving entire communities in despair. Such thoughtless policies underscore a glaring disregard for the human cost of political posturing. It also causes ripples north. Costs will be lower for US industries that rely on Mexican imports, such as farming, manufacturing, and retail, while their profit margins decrease. Layoffs within these industries will disproportionately contribute to the economic gap among working-class Americans. Trump's misguided tariff policies are poised to worsen the very issue they claim to address: illegal immigration. By destabilizing Mexico's economy, these tariffs will likely drive more people to seek better opportunities abroad, leading to an even greater influx of immigrants at the US border. This flawed approach exemplifies Trump's lack of precision in addressing complex issues. Instead of tackling the root causes of migration, poverty, violence, and lack of opportunity, his tariffs amplify these problems, perpetuating a self-sustaining cycle of instability and desperation. Far from solving the crisis, his actions fuel the conditions that drive it. While Trump's destructive policies have caused significant harm, there remains a path forward, one grounded in diplomacy, mutual respect, and shared success. Constructive dialogue and cooperation between the US and Mexico are essential to finding lasting solutions. Both nations must prioritize joint investments in Central American development and collaborative immigration efforts, addressing the root causes of migration rather than relying on economic pressure. Through genuine partnership, we can build a future that tackles these challenges effectively and sustainably. In the future, Mexico has to cement its relationship with other Latin American countries, joining an alliance resistant to unfair trading. It is within the realm of possibility for Mexico to establish regional alliances and achieve world recognition by negotiating from a vantage point of influence. Finally, both governments should seriously invest in educating their public about the benefits of trade and the negative consequences of protectionism. A tariff war is invariably based on a lack of information, while increased awareness of economic interdependence can provide a higher order of public support for the reasonable, cooperative policy. Trump's decision to impose tariffs on Mexico is more than an economic blunder. It violates international solidarity, respect, and cooperation principles. By weaponizing trade, he undermines the US-Mexico relationship and destabilizes the global trading system. This reckless move erodes trust and creates unnecessary fractures in an interconnected world. Mexico, facing this unjust pressure, must remain resolute and strategic. Rather than capitulating to economic coercion, it should rally global support, reinforcing the importance of collaboration based on mutual respect and shared interests. Progress comes not from threats and sanctions, but from partnerships that transcend unilateral power plays. Trump's tariffs are a stark reminder of how fragile international relationships become when isolationist, unilateral actions replace diplomacy. The choice is clear at this crossroads: regress into harmful isolationism, or embrace the spirit of cooperation that has historically defined the US-Mexico partnership. Mexico must push back to defend its sovereignty and set a precedent for other nations facing similar unjust tactics. A unified global stand is essential to protect the delicate trade balance that fuels economic growth worldwide. For the United States, this is a moment of reckoning. Bullying a neighbor is not leadership. True leadership is empathetic, forward-thinking, and collaborative, working with allies to address complex challenges. Anything less is a failure to uphold the values defining a global leader. The US and Mexico have always been stronger together. Intertwined economies, shared cultures, and mutual challenges make them natural partners. As the way ahead is built, both nations will remember that prosperity is not a zero-sum game, but what benefits one often benefits the other. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative and educative, please support us by subscribing to the channel and ensuring you hit the like button. See you in our next video.